TYT Sports, everybody. Jason Rubin here with Ben Goldstein coming in from CagePotato.com. We just finished up our discussion on UFC 182, Jon Jones versus Daniel Cormier. Make sure to check out that link right here. And moving forward, though, next topic we have, what is going to be next for Jon Jones and what is going to be next for Daniel Cormier? Now, we've seen the consensus, a lot of sources, a lot of talk about Jones being potentially the greatest UFC fighter to ever live, at least pound for pound. And it doesn't seem like too many people can beat him. Ben, what are your thoughts on Jones and his future and his next fight and what's going to happen with a few more title defenses? What are we going to see?
Right. Well, I think the only marketable fight for him at light heavyweight is a rematch with Alexander Gustafsson. You know, that's the guy who actually did give Jones the toughest fight of his career last September. Gustafsson is fighting Anthony Johnson later this month in Sweden. And if Gustafsson wins, you know, Jones versus Gustafsson too, that's the obvious matchup to make. And if Anthony Johnson wins, you know, he'll probably get a shot himself. But beyond that, there's really nobody at 205 pounds who's a credible threat to Jon Jones right now. Which is why I hope Jones leaves the division, goes up to heavyweight, you know, sometime within the next year or so. We want to see this champion, this supervillain, this heel, get a real challenge. And there just aren't many left in his division because he's put in that work. He's beaten all the top guys. Run it one more time with Gustafsson and he gets to that. That's it. There's nobody left in the division. I'd like to see him go up to heavyweight and you know, I guess fight people more his own size, you could say.
So if he were to make that move to heavyweight, who in that division do you think could give at least an exciting 5 rounds against Jones?
Well, I mean, you start with the champion, Cain Velasquez. Yeah. And what's interesting is that Cain Velasquez and Daniel Cormier are, of course, training partners. And you saw after the fight, you know, Cormier being consoled by Cain Velasquez. And you can only imagine what both those guys are feeling and how Velasquez would want to, you know, avenge his training partner, his good friend. I mean, that's a sort of a fantasy fight for down the road, but you could already see that having a storyline and having a beat. I mean, I hope we get to that point because, I mean, that would be a fantastic fight. I
was just going to say, the headlines, the storylines that would be around that, especially being Cormier's training partner, my God, that would be fantastic to see. Mm-hmm. So, again, speaking of Cormier now, he has a little more interesting road considering there are fights for him that will come to be in the next, at least 2015, 2016 going forward. Who do you think would be another match for Cormier? And will this be the type of fight against Jon Jones that could just demoralize Cormier going forward? Do you think this is he going to win another fight in the Octagon?
Right. That's a good question. I mean, Cormier said after the fight, this is not going to ruin me. And I really hope it doesn't. And it probably won't. You know, Cormier is already 35 years old. He still has a few years of competition left in him. He's still one of the best light heavyweights in the world. Mm-hmm. And, you know, like I said earlier, if Jones moves up to heavyweight in a year or so, Cormier could still be around contending for the light heavyweight belt. So I think ideally, Cormier should fight the loser of that Gustafsson versus Anthony Johnson match I mentioned before. That's happening later this month. And, you know, Cormier maybe gets another chance to prove that maybe he's not on Jon Jones' level. Maybe he's not quite there, but he's still good enough to beat anybody else at 205 pounds. And, you know, in a year or two, he could still be around. He could still have that belt around his waist.
Yeah, you know, he was putting in every fight before Jon Jones, he was throwing guys on the mat, and his, again, as we mentioned, the Olympiad in wrestling, and that was against Jones. That was his first opening round loss in the UFC, which I found to be an interesting little note there. So it's just that Jon Jones is too good. So guys, what do you think about Jon Jones? Do you think he's the best pound-for-pound fighter of all time? What do you think's next for Daniel Cormier? Do you think he's going to be ruined? Don't forget to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Check out Ben Goldstein over at CagePotato.com for some great UFC news. And don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.